Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Startup Development Panel. We have four very distinguished panelists. We're very lucky to have Mr. Bo-Fei He, who is the CEO of DeepGlint, Adler Schallenberg, CEO of Student Universe, Louis Lee, who is the CEO of Pacific Founder, and Terry Russell, Managing Director of Interface Ventures. What we're going to do is we're going to have our distinguished panelists introduce themselves a little bit to you and tell them the story of how did they get involved in a startup. And then we're going to have some prepared questions for them. And then we would open it up for audience participation. As you can see, there are 2 microphones on each aisle. So when we get to the Q&A, please do come down to the microphone. It's a big room, so we wouldn't be able to hear you if you speak from your seat. So that's that. So let's start off with Mr. Bo-Fei He. He is, sorry, excuse me. So he is the CEO of DeepGlint, which is a computer vision company with very deep machine learning technology. And prior to that, he has a lot of really deep experience with big companies. And he also served as the GM of China for 2 publicly listed companies, Intuit and Blackhawk Network. So, Bo-Fei.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It was a pleasure to come here and to share some of my thoughts about going to startup. As Elaine shared with you, I'm the co-founder and CEO of DeepGlint. We are probably one of the fastest growing technology-driven startup in China in the past year. We're a computer vision company, and we're focusing on mission-critical applications such as video surveillance, retail, shopper behavior analysis. And for myself, I'm a Stanford MBA, graduated in 2010. And before that, I worked extensively in retail and consumer goods, Procter & Gamble in sales and marketing, and Beijing Hualian Group for retail. And after that, I was the GM of Intuit and Blackhawk Network. So for myself, I think I wanted to be an entrepreneur when I was a kid. When we were a kid, when we were asked what you want to do in the future, some would say scientist, some would say astronaut. And when people ask me that question, my answer was 做生意, or in Chinese. And at that time, there's no term as entrepreneurship. It's just do business. My father was a businessman, and in his time, it was really rare. He started to sell wholesale, distribute matches, the thing that we don't use anymore, in the early 1990s. And he was the largest distributor for matches in Sichuan, Yunnan, Guizhou province in the early 90s. And I was fortunate enough to, started learning business with him and from him at that time. And I always know that I want to be an entrepreneur. When I was in high school, when I was 17, in 1997, I came to the US for the first time, and I saw a wonderful, amazing thing that I think it's so cool, which is the vending machine. And when I got back to China, I got the first vending machine to my city, to my province, to my high school actually. I talked to the principal, and I asked him whether I can have this, set up in our class outside our classroom, and he said yes. And after that, I had 6 of them, operated in my high school for about 5 or 6 years. So that was in my high school. And in college, I invented what was the name? Low-cost auto-flush toilet. Because in China at that time, in public restrooms, people don't flush all the time. It's really, it's mind-bothering for me, and so I want to solve that problem. So I had that, and I had a patent, and sold it to another company later. But after graduating college, I realized that I don't have a brilliant idea that I want to work on. So I started working in Procter & Gamble, and then such and such, as I described, for almost 10 years. And actually at Stanford, probably you would know this, Stanford, nothing, the greatest thing you can do is to do your own startup, right? It's startup or nothing. So, after graduate from Stanford, I also, started thinking about doing a startup, but still, I don't feel that I was ready, which I'll explain later. How do you define readiness? I don't feel that was ready, so I started working as the GM, set up actually for the two companies I worked for after GSB, the Intuit and Blackhawk Network. I built the office, built the operation from scratch, and build a team, build a product, and the market. At that time, I felt it would be very, very close to entrepreneurship, because instead of getting funding from venture capital, you're getting funding from your headquarters and do all the things. You build a team and you make all the decisions. It sounds like it's really a great substitute, or probably the best substitute for me versus doing startup. But the reality is it's not. So last June, I quit my job without any hesitation. Actually, it was, for me personally, it's probably the worst time ever in my lifetime to quit my job, because my first child was 1 month old. My dad, I'm the only son, and my dad just had his second surgery for cancer. So, in terms of the time of life to quit your job, it's the worst time ever. But at that time, my boss, the president of international business of Blackhawk, flew from the US to reveal the business, with me in a meeting. And during that meeting, I don't have any plan. I didn't have any plan. But during that meeting, I realized, nothing we have planned for the next 6 months is of any interest to me. I don't want to do, it's just, I'm not passionate about that. And realizing, in my family, there is a new life born. My dad is suffering so much. I realized, life is so short. I want to do something I'm really passionate about. I want to do something that really matters. So during that meeting, without any plan, I said, you know what? I quit. And he was like, what did I say? Is there anything I said like offend you or something? I was no, sorry. I know it's unprofessional, but I just feel like it's the time. So that was my story. I quit my job at that time, I don't know what to do at that time. But in the next 45 days, I think I gained about entrepreneurship, about what I want to do, because I said multiple times I didn't know what I want to do. I didn't know whether I was ready. But after I quit my job, I think the vision, everything became so clear. And when I met my co-founder Yon, he was an ex-Google researcher, computer vision expert, then I just know that this is something I want to do. So yeah, that's my story, and I would love to share it with you more in the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. So that was a really wonderful story. Yesterday I was at the Mass TLC Innovation Unconference, and Bill Warner, who is one of the most famous entrepreneurs in the Boston area, led a session about starting companies from the heart. And I think that Buffet's story really speaks to the passion that once you actually find something that really speaks to you, to your passion, that's when you know that you're ready. So anyway, our next panelist is Atle Skalleberg, CEO of Student Universe.
You can hear me okay?
No.
No? Pick it up. Can you hear me okay now? Yeah. So yeah, I'm Atle Skalleberg. I'm the CEO of Student Universe, a company you should all be familiar with, hopefully. Hopefully a lot of you have used us and happy with our service. So we're basically an online travel agency providing student, youth, and faculty with exclusive deals for travel products. We are based right outside Boston in Waltham, and we have been around for more than a decade now. As far as my background and story goes, I grew up in Norway, Scandinavia. I got my undergraduate degree in Norway and then moved to the US for grad school. As a lot of international students, I was absolutely certain that I would return immediately after my graduation. Started working in the US here in Boston and loved it. And 10 years later, I'm here and still loving it. I think the entrepreneurial spirit is hotter than ever. Being an entrepreneur is now considered being a rock star, which I'm very, very excited about. I love the fact that some of the smartest minds in the world are now considering not just the big, glossy, resume-building organizations, but actually building something much more meaningful than just joining consulting or big tech companies, which is also a great career, don't get me wrong. But you should strongly consider building something with a team of people or joining a small team and building something from the ground up. I think that's incredibly rewarding, and it could actually be very rewarding monetarily as well. We'll cover some of the other opinions that I have and some of the few recommendations that I can make, but I'm happy to be here, and I don't know if my slide is up, but feel free to tweet for this conference. Feel free to tweet directly at me, and if I can't get back to you today, I will certainly get back to you by the end of today or the weekend. If you have any questions. If I'm not that interesting, then just don't tweet.
He's pretty interesting. Follow him at the Twitter handle. What is the hashtag?
Hashtag is MIT Chief.
MIT Chief. I shall write it on the board so you will tweet compulsively. Thank you very much. Our next panelist is Louis Lee. The name tag is incorrect. It's Louis, who is the founding partner and CEO of Pacific Founder. And he also has been like a professional manager, post-85 professional manager. Louis.
All right, that's an unavoidable mistake because I'm from Hong Kong, so the pronunciation comes from Mandarin. So it's not a mistake at all. So hello everyone, my name is Louis. I'm from Hong Kong. So currently I'm based in Beijing. I started a company who help startup to accelerate. So you guys is the one who dug the gold in a gold rush. I'm the one who sold the water. So anyway, I won, right? So can you click the slide, please? I'm trying to make it very short because I don't think you take all the notes out, and you can just take picture, don't write anything on your paper. Our target client is state-owned enterprise, publicly listed company, and also internet startup. And our focus is for. Do you have? Can you get in the clicker? Yes. Mobile internet application, new media marketing in China, what we call WeChat, right? Not Weibo anymore. Okay. Technological innovation. Oh, good. So service provided, you can see the word critical. Okay. Do you know what is the definition about critical? Less than 6 months. Okay, 3 months. So basically, our client usually have a very designated goal and critical need for these 3 types of service: fundraising, recruitment, and turnaround. Okay, I will tell you more on the panel sharing because this is really crucial. Your dream doesn't end after you get round A funding. The nightmare start after the round A funding. Okay, so. Before telling you my startup, I want to share some of my experience. Just like any of you, I graduated in the bachelor school, and I have quite a lot of internship. First in Citigroup, Facebook, and Lonely Planet, because I love travel, and Student Universe helped me a lot because I got the last-minute ticket since 2008. All right, I graduated in 2008 and come out to do KPMG auditing. Where a lot of people were curious, I don't look like an auditor, do I, right? Seriously speaking, because the Lehman Brothers comes at that fall, remember September 2009, so I choose to go back to Hong Kong to do the boring accounting job. Any major accounting here? No? Okay. I'm sorry to say that really auditing accounting is not my type. So after a while, 2.5 years, I got a chance recruited by the CEO, the ex-CEO of Groupon, Angel Mason. I've been a founding team in Groupon China. I'm in charge of 60 city office in China. So it's a big job for a young kid, just graduated from school for 3 years. I literally fly 770 time for the 3 months period. So just open a city, just like Uber. Okay, Uber expansion is traumatic as well. They open city like 10 days, one city. So that's why they grow so fast. And then I come back to Hong Kong. I think it's a promotion, or people interpret it as as a comeback, okay? I go back to Hong Kong and I become much senior than other peers because they still stuck in auditing, okay? So after that, I still want to work in China because Hong Kong is too small for me, okay? So I pick a company who do mobile payment, and it's called iBox Pay. I be the chief COO, and actually I also do the fundraising for them because they didn't pay me for 6 months when I get in. So, you know, founding a startup is not easy for most of the people. And then that come to my mind. I don't want to start up a company when that young, okay? Look at Xiaomi. How old is Lei Jun? Do you know how old is Lei Jun when they start up Xiaomi? No? 40-something, okay? So I'm here to share some of my view about startup in China instead of in the States. So the environment's different. People convince me, even Dr. Lee from the Innovation Center, okay, the 创意工厂, right? So they told you have to work a bit before you start up something in China. So that's why I found a company to help people to start up company, okay? So I don't tweet, okay? I do WeChat, LinkedIn, and email. So I have 5 seconds for you to scan it before they stop me, so try it, okay? I would love to share the story about how to make a startup more successful in China, okay? Remember, in China. So thank you.
Thank you, Louis. So since Terry doesn't have slides, we can leave that up forever, so you can follow him.
Really? Cool.
We'll just leave him up forever. Anyways,
I'll just use Lewis's slides.
so Dr. Terry Russell, Managing Director of Interface Ventures, where he helps startups build up. He co-founds startups and, you know, basically advises startups, and it's all over startups. Terry.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here today. It's a great group of people, and encourage you to ask a lot of questions. It's a wonderful experience up here on the. You cannot hear me. How close do I have to get? Very close. How's that?
That's good.
So, thank you. So, I'll give a little bit of my history. I was not coming from a business family. My parents worked for either hospitals or the state their whole lives. I was an academic, didn't know anything about business, never had any interest in business, and during graduate school got involved in inventing some stuff, and people came and started asking me questions like, well, how much does this cost? And I said, well, who cares? It's cool. You know, why would you care how much something costs? And they're like, well, it'll never work in the real world unless you know how much it costs. So I realized there's a whole realm of existence I wasn't aware of. And as I got into that and started writing grants and, you know, you're talking about the future, you realize you're telling these stories, well, this will cure cancer, this will put us on the moon. But like as a professor, as an academic, like no one really holds you to any of that stuff. So I started to become interested in how do you make these amazing breakthroughs real? And so that sort of began my journey. I also am psychologically unemployable. I don't work well for others. I don't do what I'm told usually. And so there's a lot of psychological and external reasons. And I thought, well, money is important at some point. So that was all good. So basically, I had, going back to Beaufait's point about it sometimes never being the right time. I think I told my girlfriend of, I think we dated for 12 years at that point. I told her I said, I'm quitting Harvard. I'm leaving my postdoc. I'm going to start a company, and do you want to get married? There was a long silence. And she said, I'm sorry, what were the first two things? So off I went, not knowing anything about business, literally nothing. I mean, like never taking an accounting class. I didn't know how to balance a checkbook. But I thought I had a better way of doing some science projects I'd seen in grad school. And so I started sitting in on MIT business classes, joined a 50K team, tried to pretend I understood what everyone was talking about, and it was great. My goal in my first company was, number one, to make $1 billion, and number two, to learn how to keep doing this because I'd found the thing that I love to do. And for those of you who are scientists, you know you can dedicate your whole life to developing a cool breakthrough, a key understanding. But that's just the beginning for a business, right? Because now you have to get the money right, the people right, the market timing right. and it's really challenging. And I really love that. It was like being a conductor with this wonderful symphony. So bunch of companies later, I'm still doing it. I love what I do, and Interface Ventures is our latest incarnation, where we basically partner with universities or national laboratories or individual inventors or scientists who want to bring an experienced business person or business people to the mix and help raise money, build a company, and go off into the sunset if it all works. Sometimes we have to tell people bad news, like no one's going to buy your toy. But more often than not, we find some really amazing stuff. And it's very rewarding when it all works, especially when some of your inventions can change people's lives. So thank you for having me here again. Again, happy to take questions later on.
Thank you, Terry. So we're going to start off the discussion with a few questions. I'm going to start with Bo-Fei. So you talked about the moment when you looked at your manager and you said, I quit.
Yeah, I quit.
Right? So you quit. Can you talk to us a little bit about a day in the life before you quit and a day in the life now? And how do you feel about it and how is it different for you?
Okay, sure. I think as I shared with you that right after graduating from GSB, when I first became the general manager of Intuit China, I thought at that time, this is the perfect job for me. Because I know I wasn't into professional service. I know I don't want to be a middle manager in a big corporation. I think this is probably the closest I can get as an entrepreneur if I don't have a great idea that I want to work on, if I don't have a real to do startup. I think this is the closest I could ever be, and this is a perfect job for me. And it turns out it's really different. And I can say this because I work for two companies like this, and they're all based in Silicon Valley. So they're not like traditional Fortune 500. They're very tech-driven as well. And I think there are two things that's fundamentally different. One is my own mindset. When you're working for a big corporation, you have, I would use the term, endless resources. You have all the functions, you have all the team, you have headquarters to support you. So when you make decisions, when you're trying to allocate resources, I think you always have a plan B. You always know that it's okay. You tell yourself it's okay. But when you are running a startup, I don't know for others, but for me, you never have a plan B. There's only one option. You have to make the right decision all the time. And every day, believe me, as an entrepreneur, you face millions of problems, of challenges, of all sorts of difficulties. And you have to make the right decision. And you know that you don't have a plan B. You know there is no one that you can, to say, I'm sorry. So that's a very, very different mindset that I had versus the one I have right now. And in terms of what I do, very differently. I think as an entrepreneur, as the CEO of a startup, I think I spend most of my time now looking for talents or dealing with people. I think as a startup, we only have 35, 36 people, but we're growing so fast. And I realize the most valuable, the best resources. I think sometimes people ask me what does a CEO should do in a startup or in a big corporation. I think for me, I think the CEO should allocate resources, and human resource or talent is the best resource you can have. So looking for talents, attract talents. I probably spend 60, 70% of my time doing that. And actually, I'm doing this right now. I'm flying to the U.S. to attend MIT Chief, to have more people know about DeepLearning, and hopefully to have some of you interested in us and join us. So that's what I'm doing. And also, but in a big corporation, you always, I think you deal with more of operational issues. And there is a lot of internal consumptions. There is frictions that for example, in the past, I thought when I got the job, I thought I can make all the decisions. I was the head of China, and it's a very different market. It's a very different team. But it turns out that for the both job I took, I think and sometimes I have to wake up every 5 o'clock in the morning to have conference calls with the U.S. just to explain one very simple, one just common sense for me, but something that they don't understand to different teams, different leadership, different functions for 3 or 4 weeks, every day in the morning, 5 o'clock, just to do that. But think about it, your competitors, your other startups that are competing with us, they make 3 decisions, 4 decisions, and they change their website overnight. But even a single, very small change needs to go through the headquarters. I think, at least for the companies I work for, I think they really values the China market, and they know it's the importance. But still, I think they have their concerns. They don't know how, exactly the right way. Because if you think about it, there's not many, or even not very, very few Silicon Valley companies are successful in China. So they're exploring, and they have these concerns. They have these holdbacks, and that just hold them down. So I think it's a very different mindset. So yeah, that's for me. We're only 18-month old. As DeepLean is only 18-month old. So I spend probably 60% of my time on people, 40% of my time on product. That's what I do. But to be very honest with you, for my previous job, I probably spent 60 or 70% of my time managing up, to be very honest. So that's how we grow so fast in the past 18 months. But as you can see, there are not many U.S. or Silicon Valley based or internet companies that are successful in China. So that's very different. Yeah.
Thank you. So Adler, 60% people, 40% product. Do you find that you're actually facing the same sort of mix? What are the biggest challenges that you run into as CEO of a young company?
It's remarkably similar to what Beauvais stated. I think some of the assumptions that you go into when you either found a company or become a CEO of a company are fundamentally challenged when you start realizing what you're actually spending your time on. One of my favorite positions or sayings around that is really, you report to the company does not report to you. And that's not a kind of glossy statement. It's truly the truth. You need to provide people with the resources and the help that they need to move and make decisions. And finding talent is actually a challenge that until you get there, it's a very good problem to have, because it means you're growing. It means you're looking at new opportunities. You want to put your best people on opportunities, not challenges. But we're truly always looking for new people, and if I can plug it too, then we have a lot of open positions. And if you're interested in Student Universe, then please don't be afraid to let us know that you are.
And have you run into any situations where you had some assumptions going in as CEO from a strategy standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, and you found something different awaits you?
Yeah, there are several large areas or large topics rather. I think to piggyback on the previous point, the people business, if you can call it that, the actual working within a team that's growing and working within a team that reaches certain thresholds. When we crossed 50 people, the organization all of a sudden looked very different from when we were 35. When we crossed 150 people, we start seeing all these new dynamics and challenges from an HR perspective. And what I think I've learned and realized, that my assumption going into that was, I don't have to spend a large amount of time dealing with people. Now, I love dealing with people, but I don't have to understand the issues of each department. I don't have to understand how we're going to hire the next 50 engineers. But you do. You absolutely fundamentally do. And that's one assumption that I got wrong. The other, again, on the people side is, I'm a technologist, and I love solving problems with technology. It's scalable, it's fun, it's the way the world is going to be a better place. But at the end of the day, technology is actually, to some degree, not that hard compared to running a team of human beings working together. And that is something that I assumed would actually just come with the fact that we're working on challenging, fun stuff, that all this stuff just works out. But technology ends up being a commodity compared to so many other challenges that we're dealing with. And last but not least, I would say, and you can say this in so many fancier ways, and there are a million good business books out there that probably some of which you should read and have read, but done beats perfect. I spent so much time on the last 5 to 10% of business problems and technology problems, only to realize that I'm actually the only person that cares about that last 5%. It does not have to be perfect. Get it to market, move faster than your competition, and realize very early in your startup career or corporate career that it does not have to be buttoned up and everything does not have to be ultra glossy.
Yes. Very good, thank you. Good enough is good enough. That's very hard for technologists and product people to get, so remember that. So while we're talking about people issues, Louis, can you comment on what are some of the unique challenges and rewards of like building a startup in China, Hong Kong ecosystem? So being Chinese, I like to think that my people are the best people. We're very entrepreneurial, we have extremely good work ethic, but my mother never really supported me, in my entrepreneurial pursuit, so she just doesn't get it. Do you run into the same thing?
Yeah, I run into the same thing because I'm from Hong Kong too. My mom said I should buy a house before I got startup. So yes, I feel the same thing when I study in Hong Kong, but no in Beijing or Shanghai. But first, give them a salute for a worse environmental condition because the air is always the worst among all the environment, okay? So I do agree that the talent management is very crucial for all the startup, but it depends on the stage, okay? So I still have my nightmare about Groupon. So I just told you about Groupon is very famous in expansion. It spent 6 months and then it's opened up 12 countries in Europe, and it still spent 6 months, opened 17 offices in China. So I was in the China stage. So open up a city, first of all, we need to practice a model in Beijing and Shanghai. So we come up a city manual, guidebook, just like you open up a McDonald's, starting from hire the GM, hire the customer service, setting up the proper incorporation certificate with the government. In that stage, I honestly don't think talent is an issue in China because we are crowded, okay? So as long as you have a headhunter with you, you can pay them, they can put good people on board. So here's why suggesting, so maintaining talent is more challenging for most of the startup, okay? You can always sell a dream or kidnap someone from their previous job, okay? You can brainwash them, you can manipulate them, but yes, how can you keep the manipulation or the dream last longer, okay? So the turnover rate for my client is more than 60% in Beijing startup, okay? Even Didi Taxi. Look at Didi Taxi New, they changed the operation head for 3 times already for the past 1 year. So I think maintaining talent is more my focus. Then you need to do by do a better division of job according to title. In China, most of the founders used to dedicate job to the one who close to them, to the trust or longest service hour. Okay, so I think most of clients, they have a lot of vice president, but I don't even know what they do. Okay, they do a lot of stuff. VP means, okay, he is my second hand, so he do all the stuff, including finance, including human resources. So when I come to my service, first of all, I need to do a very structured organization chart. So to make a division of work, and then the KPI to motivate them, okay? Don't tell them I will give you stock options so you work hard. No. In China, there is an average service period for 2 years for a startup. It's much shorter than Europe or in the States. So if you want to maintain a team longer, so you need to work for the KPI and also the motivation package. I think if you can fix this too, and working a startup in China is not a challenge, because I don't think Chinese talent need a Google-like office in Beijing. I don't see any Google-like office in Beijing. I do see one in Shanghai, but it's for Nu Skin, the direct selling company, not for internet startup. So yes, in China, they have a lot of talent. Second, you need to work on the motivation and also the division of labor. Third, I think, yes, you can sustain them more than 2 years, and you can work longer, and then you can survive a bit like long term.
Thank you. So, Terry, you are a physicist. You're like a rocket scientist, right? So, so my question for you is that, you know, for rocket scientists or physicists or, you know, PhD engineers or any sort of like technologists looking to start a company, how do you actually think about putting together a founding team so you have a good skill set to cover all the bases?
I'm not sure you think about it any differently than if you weren't a physicist, right? No, and I mean that in the sense that business is business and physics is physics, right? Neither one, I mean, physics is harder than business. I mean, having done both in different ways, intellectually. You know, I mean, I think it's product, it's market, it's people, it's all those sorts of things. I think the thing you have to watch out for as a scientist is falling in love with your science or your technology. At the end of the day, and this is a challenge because, you know, when you think about forming a team between a business person and a science person, if there's two people there, you know, the natural reaction is, oh, it should be 50-50. And, you know, you could take different perspectives on that because the scientist will say, well, it's my technology that's enabling this business. And the business person will say, well, yes, but I'm building the business, right? And ultimately, these are very personal discussions, right? But I've always thought that there's a bias towards the business, and that's coming as a science guy. So, because the science person's developing the technology, when the technology's done, that's the beginning of the business, right? And you still have to sell it and, you know, meet customer needs. The customer doesn't care what the technology is. They don't care what the magic is. They just want it to work. They want their pain to go away. So, I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, you need both.
Right. So, yeah, so I'd like to ask the other panelists to comment on what's a good starting team, like what's a good kernel?
Yeah, I want to share my 2 cents on this because me and my co-founder, I'm a business background. My co-founder is a scientist. He was a researcher at Google Research and Google X Lab. I think when we're talking about, you know, team up for a scientist and a business person, we often think about, you know, the complementary of the skill set, right? I think that's the thing people think about the most. But I think that's just the basics. You need to be, you know, the skill set needs to be complementary for you to, you know, to make it happen. But I think there are 2 other things that's probably even more important based on my own experience. You know, like there are 4 C's in diamond, you know, clarity, carrot, or something like that. There are 3. I think there are 3 C's in entrepreneurship partnership. I think the first one is chemistry. And when I say chemistry, it's not only about, you know, 缘分 or something like vague, right? I think the founders, you have to have the very similar or hopefully the same vision. You both needs to want the same thing. Either is to change the world, it's okay, or you both want the financial returns, but I think the vision needs to be very, very similar or aligned. I think that's very, very important. And then it's complementary, I think everybody knows. And one thing that people usually forget is compromise. I see a lot of partners break up, and, you know, scientists and business, and when they team up, they think, you know, I know technology, you know business, this is a good team. But then, you know, deep into the business, into the operations, the argument will be, you know nothing about technology, you know nothing about business. So can you find a way to compromise? So for my own case, when I met Yon, my partner, you know, we just fell in love, you know, just right away. We just, yeah. But it took us almost a month and a half for us to move forward to start talking about, you know, the share or the ownership or whatever, you know, it needs to be discussed between partners. Because we're not post 90s. We're both in our 30s, and we understand that I think as partners in a startup, you probably spend more time with each other than with your spouse, with your family. So it's such an important relationship. And we had a great conversation before I met Yon, and I thought it would be a 30 or 40 minutes conversation, and it actually lasted for 13 hours. So it was a great conversation. We liked each other. We're so excited about the idea. And probably in most other cases, you started to talk about, how we, get together and start this company. But I said, well, let's cool it down, because I just quit my job. I don't have anything to do. I said, let's donate my time. I would just come to work every day as if I'm part of the team. And I just want to make sure that we have this chemistry. I want to make sure that we can work well together as partners. I want to make sure that we could find our common ground when we have problem, when we have issues, and that could only be tested in a real life work. So I think that's really important to compromise with each other, because at the very beginning, it's like in romance. At the very beginning, everything is wonderful. We love each other. It's so beautiful. You're so smart. Everything is beautiful. But when it comes to everyday challenges, problems, issues, you need to find a way. You need to make sure that both of you, or the team, the founding team, has a way to compromise to make a decision.
Actually, we're gonna do questions after. Do you mind holding? Okay. Okay, do you mind coming up?
I think that's a no.
Yeah, that's a no. Yeah.
Sorry, I had to ask this question. I'm sorry, but I'm in the same stage as you just described. I have an idea. I'm a technologist. I'm trying to find a partner or a few partners to start a company. I quit my job like a year ago.
Yeah.
I did nothing in that year, but to try to find people and refine my idea. But the trust issue always came up, right? So I think you're very, very lucky because you found your love in work. But when he decided to take you on, or both of you decided to take you to team up and work, but without a formal agreement, how could he, as a technologist, be sure that after a month or two, you won't run away, break with him, run away with his idea, and found another team? How did you address that issue? Thanks.
Well, I'm the business person, so I might be the one that you are in fear of. So I don't know, maybe you should ask Yon, but for me, to be very honest, I gave a talk at Stanford a couple of days ago, and someone asked me the same question. They said, I have a great idea, brilliant idea, and I was so afraid that, I want to explore, I want to find partners, I want to explore funding opportunities, but what if I tell people and then they just steal my idea, like, the social network or Facebook, whatever, and doing their own thing. And to be very honest with you, I think idea is not that important. Execution is way more important. I don't think, in Zuckerberg's case, I don't think the whatever brothers, I don't think they can build a Facebook like Zuckerberg did. So I think the idea is not that critical. I think if there's a list, I think idea, or especially the initial idea, is probably will fill out top 10. It's not that critical. So forget about it. I mean, you can't, if you have that concern, if you have that hold back in your heart, you can't find a partner. That's all I can say. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So Adler, what are your thoughts on team, conflict, trust? How should you feel about your partners in the business, right? Partners in crime.
I think a lot of it was covered, and I fundamentally agree with a lot of what Beaufait said, especially the idea part. Needless to say, it's very important, but it's actually not as important as having a team that can execute. When you acquire companies, we've made late 2013, we made our most recent acquisition, and you're forced to look at what's really important because you're about to pay a lot of money for to bring someone on board, and you want that to work, much like you do it on an individual basis, but you're not doing it with a team, with a company. And what that does to you is you're really forced to focus on what matters to me. Why am I making this acquisition? And what I would say comes out of that process is really team, but not just team. We use a term at Student Universe called battle tested. Like, have you been through something that should have broken you, but you came out good on the other end? If you've been to business war, then that's a good thing. Things will get ugly, even though most startup founders think that they have an idea what ugly looks like. You don't. I think chemistry is certainly very important. We look at teams as, can you work together? But can you work together when it gets ugly? And do you have a track record of that you can prove to me that something got ugly and you came out professional friends? You don't have to be best personal friends all the time, but at least you could continue to work together in a professional fashion. I think last but not least, you have to be honest with yourself and you have to be honest with your team. So just because you were able to do a phenomenal job in a certain category or a certain vertical at a large company does not mean whatsoever that you or your team member is ready for startup or early stage or even middle or mid-sized company life. If you look at a candidate for a partner or for an employee, an early employee, you have to be really careful with how you engage with that person to make sure that you understand whether he or she is truly a big company person or someone that you think could be in the office until 1 a.m. because a server went down and everyone needs to have hands on deck to fix this issue. If you think he or she needs to be home by 6 p.m. dinner because that's what they used to do at Oracle, forget about it. And a lot of big companies will actually give you the perfect experience for a tier 2 or tier 3 hire for your startup or company, but they just won't be the right partner for your tier 1.
Thank you. So, Louis, I have a culture-specific question on the same topic. So, it's hard enough to find, compatible people to start a company with in any culture. In America, people very, they can say anything to anyone at any time, and they're not embarrassed to tell you that you stink or that you're stupid. Chinese culture doesn't quite work like that, and, how do you deal with that when you have 2 or 3 people coming together and they have a trust issue or they're culturally inhibited to say some of the things confronting some of the conflict, because those are very difficult conversations for anyone.
Okay, so can I put your question in 2 questions? First, how Chinese people deal with conflicts or talk badly to each other? The second one is how they can move forward, right, for the team. So I still take Groupon as example. Groupon hired crazily in China. The first mistake they make is they hire a bunch of MBA. I was the only one who's not from MBA, and I'm from Hong Kong. Is anyone familiar with the company called Rocket Internet? No? They're recently listed in Europe, okay? They are really good at expanding company. Right? They copy Facebook, they copy LinkedIn, they copy Groupon, and they sold it to the founder before they listed. So there was a cultural conflict, very huge in Shanghai, because the managing director fired 1/3 of the people in China, in Shanghai office. They don't show them enough respect by telling them what they did wrong. They just okay, I follow the law, I pay you 3 months up compensation, then you go. And ultimately, the MD need to hire a bodyguard from a Marine to protect him in order to walk out the office. So I think this lesson takeaway is Chinese people need a longer time to talk, to express their feeling about either work-wise or the feeling-wise. I do my first firing in Groupon China when it's July 2011. I never fired people before. I was nervous. I stayed at home for 1 hour to go through what is the conversations should be going on when I fired him. But that day, I spent 3 hours talking to that guy. All right, so comfort him, tell them, make another good opportunity after leave Groupon China, blah, blah, blah. So how long did you guys fire people in a stay or end up a contract? I mean, it's less than 1 hour, right? Maybe. I saw the movies are up to the air. They even do the like video conferences to fire people, right? So
No, we
I
don't
think,
really.
Not really, right? Okay.
No.
I know
That's
it's
a
a
movie.
movie from George Clooney. So yes, the time spent on people in China is much longer, a lot longer. And there's another different problem is the cultural differences between different provinces. In Groupon, the culture from the north, Shanghai and Chengdu is way much different. You cannot hire people from Shanghai to manage Chengdu office. They did it, all right? So we hire MD to manage the Midwest region of China, and also from South, it's different. So don't take China and Chinese as all the same. You need to care about the regional differences. And the final question is, if you want to deal with something ugly and how Chinese people do, okay, just lock them in the room and stay overworking for 1 week. They will solve the problem. Just seriously, they have a more team spirit than the American or the European. The individualism is much less in China. Didi Taxi went down at our server this Lunar New Year. The whole team, 30 technicians, they spent 5 nights not sleeping to fix the server in Tencent office. So 5 nights without going back home. So I think that's only happens in Didi Taxi for a while. I didn't hear any story that literally I spent, okay, it's only 3 nights with them. I can't stand it. I go back to hotel and wash up. But they will ask the staff, the HR manager, to buy towel, like food to sustain them, because they lock it in the room. They voluntarily, because the ownership of the company is very essential to make them feel they own the company, not by the stock option, not by the share, but as a team.
Terry, you had a comment on our firing practices.
Actually, it was less than the firing practices, which are always distasteful, but sometimes necessary. But actually, this question and maybe talking about team formation, I mean, this is something our company thinks a lot about, because we spend a lot of time talking to scientists and universities and institutions. We sort of have a slightly more formal approach to it, and we break it down by goals, roles, values, and communication. And so I think, trust is part of that, but trust is a value. I mean, there's some people who are very untrusting. That doesn't mean that they can't form companies. I mean, there are mechanisms to deal with that. But the important thing, I think, is first of all, do you share goals? Do you share a common goal with the person you're talking about? And the only way you discover this is through a combination, I think, of communication and working with a person. I mean, this isn't like you go out on a date and then you want to marry the person, right? I mean, I think there's an illusion that sometimes magic can happen, but as Beauvais says, the passion can fade, and then you have to still show up the next day and work with this person. So understanding that you're both working towards the same thing, and that does require a bit of honesty, because if, as the scientist or technologist, you really want to be running the company and you're just using the business person temporarily, then you're building the relationship on a lie, and that's not a good thing. The roles are important. Who's going to be responsible for which parts of the organization? Even so far as you write job descriptions for each other, getting it explicit. And sometimes it seems like a needless formalism, but it's very important to get down what you're thinking out of your head onto paper and have these honest communications. The values are crucial, because if some people are, hey, we're fine sort of skating by the regulations, and other people might be overly compensating and doing everything by the book, so much so that it slows your company down. You have to be explicit about your individual values and your company values. And that also requires the individuals to have a good amount of self-awareness. And sometimes if someone is very young, or if they come from a profession where they haven't had a lot of time for self-reflection, that can be very difficult to form a company with. And then the final thing is communication, because things change. And the only way you can insulate against surprises is to be talking. You should have really good communication with your teammates. So we spend an enormous, I'd say the majority of our time, dealing with founder issues initially, because this is a marriage, this is an economic marriage, this is a work, you're spending a lot of time with these people. And as you move on in life, you find out that sometimes the softer things become important. Does the person have a sense of humor? can they get along? Do they drive you insane? Is it, and some of these things are cute foibles, and sometimes they can be fatal flaws. And so being clear about that is important, and not being too overly pragmatic. Say, well, I just need this person now, because that can turn around and bite you. Unless you're explicit about it, in which case you say, look, I want to run this company, but I need someone who's an experienced business person for 2 years to bring me through that initial play, and I'm going to make sure you're compensated appropriately for it.
Thanks. That's actually a really good book by Noah Wasserman called Founders' Dilemmas. Anybody who's thinking of starting a company and needing to think through equity split, who's going to do what in a company, they should consider looking at that book. Anyways, watching the time, I want to make sure that we have enough time to open the floor for questions. So I'm going to ask each panelist to share one bad story and one good story. Starting with Terry. What's one bad memory of being in startups and one really excellent memory in startups?
All the bad memories have been excised from my brain. I think we talk about firing people. We had a venture where it always was built to have a 5-year shelf life. We thought it would go longer than 5 years, but our partners were acquired, and things were changing very quickly, and we had to make a determination whether the company would be solvent and wind up in a good form, or whether it would be a terrible debacle, and we'd end up owing people money. And so the right thing to do was have a controlled wind down of the organization. This was a place where we'd really built a very strong culture. And so the toughest day for me was having to let, I think, 10 or 12 people go in one afternoon, one right after the other. And I kid you not, every single person in our one-on-one meetings cried. And that was, at the end, I was sort of saying, just please don't cry. And so finally, the last person in was one of our youngest employees, and she was a very tough, cynical, smart-mouth, sort of difficult person. And I thought, this is going to be great. This person will not cry. She's going on to graduate school. She's fine. And she got most of the way through the exit interview and then just burst into sobbing, racking tears. And I'm looking at her, I'm going, what? And she said, I'm not crying for me. I'm crying because this place is like a family, and I'm worried about what everyone's going to do. I'm like, oh, you're just killing me. And but we made a huge effort in the subsequent months to make sure that everyone was placed at a good job, and they're all working at large pharmaceutical companies and universities right now, and they're very successful. But having to let go a group of people, and it's just the financial reality of where we were, that was quite memorable and poignant, and it proves to you as a first-time CEO, I mean, these are people's lives, and so you should go into running a business with that level of sensitivity. That at our family events we would have 70, 80, 100 people. These families are dependent upon the decisions of you and your managers to do your job. So it shouldn't be handled lightly. So it was but that's also rewarding to know that we can build a culture that strong. So that's a challenging memory.
That's now a good memory.
Oh, now it's a great memory. Yeah, I mean everyone still talks to me. So
No, I mean like a good memory to.
Oh, I'm supposed to give a good memory? Oh, okay, great.
So we don't end on a down note, right?
Yeah, right. No, it's the good memory. What's a good memory? There's lots of good memories. Yeah, now I'm just kind of stuck in the bad memory. No, I think that there's tons of good memories. I mean, I think it's the day you come across an amazing new technology. It's the day you meet a co-founder. It's winning a big client. I think it was it was the deal that got that last company going, where we negotiated like hell for a year and a half, and we were 150 grand in the hole on legal fees. And the next day after we signed the deal, I showed up at our bank, and our $500 balance had turned into a $2 million balance. So that was a really good day, so cash is good.
Louis.
So does the bad thing go first or the good thing go first?
Bad thing goes first.
Terry already taking my story for firing people is the worst thing in the world, business world. The second worst thing is running low of cash. All right. So in iBoxpay, as I've told you before, there's 6 months I don't get a salary as a COO. So And that moment, I don't feel I should leave the company because if I leave, the company will die. So the challenge and the bad memory is how you to talk, to lie, or I think put it a good word is not lie, it's try to give them hope. The money's coming. All right, the money's coming. Trust me, everyone, if you go to a startup, the VC will drag you in the point that you run out of cash and then negotiate with the stock, the share. All right, every VC, smart VC would do it. Okay, so that 6 months, I saw what CEO do for the company. Did all the patent, or the trademark, or the product that developed by the technician or the IT guy, the ownership is between the company and themselves. So it's different. So most of the company do the patent registered by the owners or by the company. I saw several like older senior technician or the programmer try to offer cutting their salary to a basic salary because our business is running low of cash and we don't ever have an expansion. So maybe this time for a few months I don't need that much salary. Okay, this is very extreme, and the company run better, even better when they run out of cash because they have the same goal: get the money. All right. After you get fundraised, people enjoy themselves, throwing party, like having a pool party, everything. But running out of cash, if the CEO can strong enough to keep the spirit up, actually, I think the product or the business model come out from that period, I think is the most valuable. So, somehow I could say this is the worst memory ever. I don't get paid for 6 months as a COO. This is very embarrassing. The good thing is I can learn from the CEO how to maintain a team before the fund gets into the hand. So this is one hell of a story. I usually heard that many startups get fundraised and then, oh, I'm loaded, I spend off money. But when they get start of cash, then they just bankrupt. They just close up their business, okay? The good memory is when I signed the term sheet, all right? Getting the money in the pocket, because you have no idea when you are feeding 100 people behind you, okay? It's like flying an aircraft, or you're in charge of 400 people's life, like living. Even worse than like flying a plane, because those technicians have their family, they have mortgage, they have all the stuff. When the CEO signed a term sheet confirming that money comes in, I literally hug him and cry, like tears, not crying, okay? So getting the money by working hard, I think is a good memory for startup.
Great. Just to interject, the CEO leadership skills in bad times, there's a great book called The Hard Things About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz, who was at Netscape once, and that wasn't the hard thing. He had another company that was much harder, but he pulled through and he sold it for like over $1 billion. Anyway, hard thing about hard things. Adley.
Yeah, I would have to say the same. Terry kind of covered the hardest one by far, which is letting people go. But if I have to move on to the next, it's funny how they're almost not mutually exclusive. The worst and the best are the same. In one episode that we had is, days before we had a very important supplier presentation. Our data center basically crashed and burned, and our site was down, and it was one of the most important sales periods of the year, where that's obviously an absolutely terrible situation to be in, which is the bad memory. But the good memory is how every single team member is sincerely asking, how can I help? And driving to New York to pick up a new load balancer and working out of the office 24/7 to help with anything that we can possibly help with. And seeing how it's not just a place to work and a paycheck, but actually a team of people that care about the company and our customers enough to do something like that, where it's not a 5-day event, but it's a 36-hour event because of all that work. That I would say is the best memory, one of the best memories.
Yeah, well, for the first time this afternoon, I thought, I was lucky because the direction is in reverse. I have more time to prepare. But in fact, I thought about the bad memories, but I still can't think of anything. I think I'm fortunate enough that I haven't we haven't fired anyone yet. We have 0 turnover rate, and we have, far more enough cash than we can burn in the next, 24 months. So I think we're fortunate. But I think I want to make 2 comments first. I think as an entrepreneur, all the things you think might go wrong will go wrong. That's number 1. And number 2, well, I think the things that you fear the most, for example, for us, when we started the business, we think, well, it's a B2B business in China, dealing with the government, with banks, we don't know how to do that. And it's technology driven, and people are saying, China there's a Shanghai, culture that got copied really fast. We have lots of concerns. Well, things you fear the most might not be your biggest problem. So I'll share with you one thing that really scared us back in March. Because we're a computer vision company, and the depth, we use depth sensors depth sensor is one of our key, or not one of the most important component of our hardware. And the company that we're working with, and that's the only source we have at that time, PrimeSense, maybe some of you know that, was acquired by Apple in March. And we got the news from the internet, and we suddenly realized that the single most important components of our product might not be supplied in the future. And we thought it would be a huge problem, and we actually, me and my co-founder, we met, for I don't know how many hours. We just thought about ramifications. How do we tell the team? At that time, we really thought, we might not have a business if we can't find a sensor. But then I think it pushed us to look further, to explore more opportunities. Then we realized, well, it's not really that bad. There are other options in the market. It's just, we're getting so comfortable with that option, and we thought it will be a deal-breaking news to us, but it wasn't. But at least at that time, it's really scary that we thought, we can't get really good sensors. And I will tell you one of my best memories doing startup. When I think about it, it's really funny because it has nothing to do, signing the first contract with our customer. It's nothing to do with the first, the customer or first business or the completion of our prototype. It was one Thursday night in August, I think. We were working very late. I think probably most of us are still in the office. It was almost 1 o'clock in the morning. And we were exhausted, and we have I can't remember what exactly, but we have some issues we're working on. And I was exhausted. It was almost 1 o'clock in the morning. But suddenly, I just heard someone playing guitar in our office. And then people started to stand up and walk over, to the colleague that was playing, and all of us just started singing. And I have that video. It was just, I don't know, it's just one of the moments that I will remember for the rest of my life. And I cannot imagine that would happen, in any of my, previous work. I worked for many companies, and I think at that moment, I think I'm really proud that when we build a working environment, we build a company that people are doing that while working late. That's probably one of the best moments of my life. Thank you.
Thank you. We're running a little behind. Is it okay to run 5 minutes over? Okay, so I would like to open the floor for questions. Please line up on either side and post your questions at the microphones. Yes.
First, thank you very much. It was a wonderful experience and learning from all of you, your personal experience. One quick question addressed to our Hong Kongese friend. I consider Hong Kong is a paradise for shopping and eating, nothing serious there. And anyone doing other than real estate is either a polar bear, explorative, or atypical. So thank you so much for your wonderful experience. One quick question I'd like to ask is that how your company, you helping startups, companies differentiate from other competitors. That's number one. Number two, how many % of people come to you, they interested in going for healthcare, say medical device or even medicinal compounds? Or are all your customers, they are on the IT domain or technology domain other than life science?
Most of my client 50% of the client come from fundraising. Honestly speaking, they want to get faster. They want to wrap up their business model, they package a better business proposal, then get fundraising. 20 to 30% of them ask for organization restructuring. So the CEO know the co-founder will not be helpful to grow up the company because they're too young or too inexperienced, or the experience put in the different sector. So they need critical hiring for higher management and to maintain the company and at the same time grow the company. So they usually come from restructuring. I would say recruitment along with the talent management, because it's really easy to hire someone, but putting them in use and with a relatively fair competition among the co-founder or the senior management from the old time is what they need. The CEO cannot talk to them because they're friend, they're co-founder, so they need us to settle different work of division of labors, different sector, different projects. So the second question about are you referring biotechnology startup? Most of them come from American. They target in the China market. They have idea about the hardware, the devices, and also the mobile app. But I think they are too early to enter because I don't think the population in China is get used to wearing watches to monitor how you sleep, etc. If anyone in the healthcare sector can correct me if I'm wrong, because from the data, from the statistic, I think Shanghai or Hong Kong, Taiwan, they are more adapted to high-tech oriented medical treatment or medical devices. So I think most of them from the founder is either educated in the West or the team is from the West.
So you provide the funds?
No, I help them to fund the fund.
Oh, you help them fund.
Okay, there's a philosophy in my company. The company I invested, I won't manage. The company I manage, I won't invest.
Okay, thank you.
It's different.
Hi, my name is Isabel Ren. My husband and I just founded a company a month ago. I wonder, when you find an investor, how do you give away your shares, and how many shares do you want to give away, and how do you determine that? Thank you. Okay. Just one sentence, just repeat my question. How to determine the amount of investment going to your company, and how many shares do you want to give away in the startup company?
As the owner, I would counsel you to give away as few as possible. As the investor, I will help you. You should give me all of your shares. And that's right, and all the assets. I think you won't be surprised to know that there's a broad range of answers. It depends upon who you're raising the money from, what their investment mandate is. It depends upon what the goals of you and your husband are. Do you want to control the company forever? It depends upon what the market standards are, the comparables during your investment period. So if most people are selling 10% of their company or 30% or 50%, it depends. It depends upon how experienced you are and what roles you will be playing versus what roles the investor views need to be filled. So it depends on this. It's very many things.
Just add a little detail. So my husband, he is the CEO. I found the product through looking for education curriculums. Our teams we're going to manage a company. But we have a huge market already in North America. This is a reading pen and talking book. In Chinese, it's Hong En Jiao Yu. We are the exclusive distributor in North America. So I was firstly thinking about raising $1 million for a green card immigration, but for them it's like 10% for buying a green card. You're really magnifying your worth of company, and we can prove nowhere because we're just starting. Right. So to that point, we're just seeking advice on how we gonna do about it. I wonder, Mr. Lee, have some advice on it as well?
I can't help you on the immigration, so.
I know.
EB5 or EB1?
Just looking for investors and how to determine the value of the company.
All right. I think I come across a mind map from Singapore. They told you how to raise fund in different stages. First, you raise fund from your mom, from your dad, from lawyers, dentists, or idiots. So I don't know what stage are you in. You're saying like you already have a business model, exclusive contract in the state. I feel like if you're looking for pure money, the less knowledge they know about your business, the less stock you can give up. Okay? If you're looking a strategic partner to help you raise or growth in education sector, you need to give up more. Okay, so I have some client who raise money for application. The investors come from coal mine business. They don't know about anything about internet. As long as they feel they own a company, that's fine. But if you are trying to get on board some strategic partner or strategic investor, then you need to give up more. So this is a tough question. I think you need to know your bargaining power. Be proud, okay? Next time if you pitch people, just tell them I only give you 20%, not like open question. Otherwise people know you don't know your valuation. All right, go to a CPA, go to a valuation firm, get a valuation first before you talk to anyone. That's my advice.
Thank you. We have time for 2 more short questions.
Okay, I'll keep this one short. Is this turned on? Thank you. Okay, so this is a question maybe for most of the panelists, so giving Mr. Lee a break. Thank you. I wanted to know about your So as many of you are from different industries and having done this over a different, length of time, what success metrics were you looking at while you're doing this? So is it, financial success? Is it how many people you're able to touch? What number of projects you've done? Or is it just like an alignment with your initial vision? And it's open to anyone.
I think it depends a lot on which vertical you play in. At the highest level, B2B, B2C, it depends on what kind of stage you're in from an investment perspective. Right. I would say from a consumer-facing service, certainly e-commerce perspective, our number one goals are typically tied to consumer experience. Right. Everything else derives from that. That would be my kind of short answer.
Right. So in terms of consumer experience, as in like increase in KPIs, increase in NPS scores and stuff like that? Exactly.
And building a product. We at Student Universe, we fundamentally believe that the most important marketing tool we have is our product. Right. When people have a good experience, they talk about it. Targeting students specifically, you spend more time together than most other consumer groups, and we want that to be a solid experience. So early stage, we had investors that were certainly much more focused on financial KPIs, and it's your job to keep coming back to them with other alternative KPIs that are longer term and bigger vision than your EBITDA, the third year of operating this business. And again, we could spend 2 hours talking about these right. KPIs, but be very firm, much like the previous answer. Be very firm on what you believe. Obviously, spend a lot of time thinking about what you believe will drive your business, and be very firm with your investors and your community or your stakeholders around why you believe in those KPIs.
Great, thank you. Thanks so much.
Hello, my name is Yu, and I'm a graduate student at MIT. And my first, thanks for your sharing. They are inspiring. And my question is concerning about social entrepreneurship. That is, have you, any of you met with somebody who came to seek entrepreneurship with a social value? You know, someone like this.
So your question is about social entrepreneurship
Yeah.
and which parts of
Yeah.
social entrepreneurship, whether it's a good thing?
Or do you have any experience or encounter people in this field? You know?
I've had people pitch me on social entrepreneurship projects, and I think it's a worthy approach. But before you can be social, you first have to be a solid business. So double bottom line, triple bottom line businesses are good, but they don't get away from the fundamental that you have to have a business that performs. So I think that is that some people try and make the social more important than the business, and you can only get to the social through a functioning business. So
Yeah.
that's been my experience.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Before everybody leaves, I'd like to give a big hand to our rockstar panelists. Thank you for your insights.